My name is Karina Michelle, and in this video I'm going to go over the lip tattoo procedure. What is a lip blush tattoo? So this is a form of permanent makeup where we actually use a tattoo machine that is specifically designed for the face. Here's a good example of one of these machines. We use a sterile needle, single use for everybody, so everything is very, very safe. This technique is designed to kind of add a sheer color onto the lip. So it's not going to look very lipsticky, it's going to look very, very natural and just kind of give like a nice tint to the lips. It can define the borders if you've kind of lost the borders over time and give it a little bit more of a crispy look if you want it. And it can add color to very, very pale lips. So if you do have pale lips and then you get this done, it will make the lips appear a little bit fuller. However, we're not actually going beyond the lip border. So as far as like trying to make your lips look bigger by going outside, it's not going to do that. Sometimes we are also able to neutralize darker lips and kind of add warmth to the gray tones of the lip and kind of give it a little bit more of like a healthy glow. So that can also be possible. This technique is very natural. So like I said, it's not going to be anything super like bright reds or anything crazy like that. We want to make sure that everything is staying a little bit more natural, and that way it fades nicely over time. This procedure takes about 2 to 3 hours. This is not going to be tattooing the whole time. This includes sometimes numbing, sometimes the pre-draw, and just kind of make sure everything gets set up as well. So the time does kind of go by rather quickly. Does the lip tattoo hurt? The lips are the most sensitive part of the face compared to the eyes and the brows, so it is going to be a little bit more sensitive. However, I still have people that fall asleep all the time, so I feel like it really is just different for everybody. I do use numbing cream as I work, so sometimes I will actually pre-numb the lips and then start drawing. Sometimes I will actually do the outline first and then numb, so it kind of just depends. However, I do add numb as I work, so every time I do a pass, I'll add another layer of numbing cream. So it's really, really easy. It's typically more so just sore towards the end of it, and it'll feel a little bit like a sunburn towards the end, just a little bit raw feeling, but the actual tattoo process is not that bad. This technique can last anywhere from about like 1 to 5 years. Now, this is a very broad range, but it just depends on a lot of things. Your age, your skin type, the color that we use, how well you take care of it, medications that you might be on, if you're in the sun, how heavy we saturate the lips. So all this kind of plays a factor. I will say the pigment color is a big thing too. If we're using very light colors, a lot of times they're heavier, they might last a little bit longer and fade differently than very watery colors. So everything kind of plays a factor. I will say the inside part where it gets really chapped in the lips, that typically fades first. So you might find yourself, in a few years wanting to get a touch up mainly for the inside of the lips, and that's completely normal. Now that you have your lip appointment scheduled, here are some things to remember before you come in. Make sure you really exfoliate before coming in, like about a week before. Really don't want any chapped lips. Moisturize like crazy, drink plenty of water leading up to it. If you have really chapped lips when you come in for your appointment, typically when the needle hits that chapped lips, it's just gonna bleed and none of the ink is gonna go in the skin. So you really wanna make sure you're super hydrated for your appointment. If you're gonna get fillers done, make sure you get fillers before you get the tattoo. The fillers really help to kind of stretch the skin and kind of push out all the wrinkles, so it does make the tattoo much easier process and gives like a very smooth result. So if you do want to get fillers, I would say at least a month before your appointment, and then same for your touch-up appointment. Make sure you avoid any blood thinners at least 24 hours before your appointment, and this includes coffee, alcohol, pain medications, fish oil, and vitamin E pills. If you do this stuff regularly, I would say go a little bit longer than 24 hours for the lips, just because lips are the most vascular on the face, and you really don't want to be bleeding. If you do bleed, the ink won't stay in very well. That being said though, typically people don't bleed very much, and if you do, it's just like a pin needle and then it kind of stops. Now I'm going to be going over the aftercare for the lip tattoo procedure. So your lips will be a little bright at first and a little bit swollen. The brightness can just depend on the color that we choose, and the swelling can also just depend on the person, but just expect to look like you just got fillers for the first day. And the swelling can last a few days. Most of it will go away the first day, but when you sleep, the blood rushes up to your head and they might get a little poofy again in the morning, so that's all normal. They will feel very sore, a little bit like a sunburn, like the skin's kind of raw. That will last a few days, and basically you're just going to moisturize. Make sure that you're drinking tons of water. I'm going to give you a cream in your aftercare kit, and the cream you can pretty much just use as much as you want. This is going to be really good for the skin because it absorbs in it. You can also add Aquaphor or any sort of heavy moisturizer after a few days when it starts to get really flaky. It's going to feel very much like just like really chapped lips for a few days. So that's why you just kind of want to really moisturize it. You don't want any of that crackiness to kind of crack open and start bleeding. So just kind of be careful. You can always drink with a straw to kind of help. That way you're not irritating it. Avoid spicy food and acids the first few days. It's just going to kind of burn. And make sure you're not putting an ice compress on it. I know a lot of people kind of want to because it's very swollen, but the skin is very open and kind of raw, and if you put the ice on it, it can actually kind of burn it and really irritate it. So just kind of stay away from ice. You can always take ibuprofen after the appointment. Just make sure you never take it before because it's a blood thinner, but you can take it after the appointment to kind of help with the swelling as well. Do not pick anything. If you see any kind of flakiness, if you pull it off, it'll just bleed, and then also take the ink with it. So just kind of completely leave it alone and just keep moisturizing. No makeup on it for about the 7 to 10 days while it's healing. Obviously don't put lipstick on it, but just kind of stay away from foundation and stuff as well. You don't want any bacteria getting into the wound. And stay away from the sun for about 4 weeks. The lips are a little bit more sensitive to the sun, so just kind of make sure that you're really being careful with that. Don't go to the beach or anything crazy. You know, always wear a hat. Make sure you're under the umbrella if you're going to do something like that. So with every procedure, there are always risks, and I wanted to go over some of the risks of getting your lips done. One of the biggest things is just never put a laser on it. So if you ever get any sort of laser procedure done to your face, just make sure that they do not hit your lips at all. I don't see why they would anyways, but just in case, always let them know, because the ink that we use for the lips, actually if the laser hits it, it might turn it darker or just remove it and mess up the tattoo. So just kind of keep that in mind. You might bruise a little bit. It's typically nothing, like maybe a tiny dot. That's a little bit of a risk, but most people don't really bruise much. And you can always take arnica tablets ahead of time, and that kind of helps minimize bruising and swelling as well. And like with every tattoo, infection is always a risk. So just make sure you're always following the aftercare and making sure you're keeping everything nice and clean. Some things to remember of who cannot get tattooed on the lips. If you get cold sores, just make sure you take antiviral medication a few days before and a few days after, just to make sure you don't have an outbreak. If you are a smoker, it may heal a little bit chunky and a little bit cooler in color, so just kind of keep that in mind as well. You cannot get permanent makeup if you are pregnant, nursing, if you have been on chemotherapy or Accutane in the last year, if you have been on antibiotics in the last 3 months, hemophiliac, have certain immunodeficiency disorders, and if you have an autoimmune disease, we will require a doctor's note of approval, and this includes diabetes. I hope that this video helped you kind of learn a little bit more about the lip blush procedure. And if you have any questions, please feel free to visit my website.